things are working.
That's Boston mayoral candidate Marty Walsh. If you didn't recognize him, don't feel bad. Maybe you confused him with John Connolly, or Dan Conley, or Rob Consalvo, or Bill Walczak. Or maybe with a whopping 12 candidates vying for the mayor's job, you've decided to tune out. If so, you may be taking your cues from the media.
The coverage has been really weak. It's kind of astonished me how few stories you hear about it and how few substantive stories you hear.
But in the media's defense, it's been tough to cover the Boston mayor's race. For one thing, 2013 has been a year packed with other big stories.
We went from a Senate race to, the marathon and all that we went through there, Bruins Stanley Cup run, Aaron Hernandez, Whitey Bulger.
What's more, the contest lacks a clear frontrunner. A recent Boston Herald-Suffolk University poll found Connolly in the lead with just 11% of the vote. With those numbers, if you do a big story on one candidate, you have to do them all. And that's a huge commitment.
All along we've been taking a closer look at all these candidates running for mayor of Boston, and there are a bunch of them.
This week, WGBH's Boston Public Radio ran a 3-hour marathon featuring quick interviews with 11 of the 12 candidates. Meanwhile, the Boston Globe published this interactive feature showing how the candidates stand on the issues. It's a lot to process, but with the preliminary election just 7 weeks away, it's time to try. So we saw Bill Walczak, one of the candidates in that setup piece, blame the media a little bit. I want to suggest that the candidates themselves are to a large extent to blame because everyone is still so afraid of directly criticizing Tom Menino or decisions Tom Menino has made over the years that I think they've made the race pack a little less punch than it might have otherwise. When John Connolly, who in the current field was the only one to actually say, I'm going to run against Menino before Menino said he wasn't running, when John Connolly kicked off his campaign, he spent his first 3 or 4 sentences talking about how much respect and admiration he had for Mayor Menino before then going on to complain about his handling of the Boston Public Schools. So I think that is going to be changing a little bit. We saw Bill Walczak come out this week and say, I don't think Boston should have a casino, which in the context of this race was sort of a profile in courage. My question is, are the candidates going to wait too long to be that bold, and are we going to hit the preliminary with really almost no one having paid attention?
I mean, it could be that the dirty little secret here is that none of this matters. That the success in the preliminary, making the final two, making the runoff, is all about just the most basic grassroots politics known to man. You identify people who like you or who might be persuaded to like you, pull them out on the day, and that's it. And it doesn't matter what the Globe or the Herald or any of the broadcast outlets do or say. Now, having said that, one story that Connolly left off his list of distractions has been Beacon Hill. We have just had a major tax hike. I know I've been spending a lot of time up there that otherwise I might be spending on the mayoral race. I think the Globe has done some excellent features and trying to give people the info they need. And, this just could be one of those races where the casual voter, there's just no way on earth they're going to pay attention until after Labor Day. Not helpful for the candidates. I don't mean to use it as an excuse, but that could just be the reality of it.
Yeah, this is really tough. A dozen people, certainly some are more prominent than others, but all of them have some degree of credibility and plausibility, so you kind of have to give equal treatment to all of them. Right. And that just makes a really confusing mess for people trying to figure out what's going on. I did particularly like the way the Globe implemented its interactive issues comparisons. You can do some interesting things with it. I don't know about some of the issues they chose. I mean, term limits, really? Do we care? Yeah. But it was interesting. It let you do direct comparisons with people if you wanted to. So that was useful for people who want to check that out. And frankly, I commend our WGBH colleagues, Jim and Marjorie, for doing all of those interviews. I hope that it's available as an easily downloadable podcast.
It's easy to get to online,
yeah.
Well, the Globe has a really huge challenge in trying to present this with 12 candidates. And the problem, as you were intimating here, is that nobody wants to offend anybody else. It's not like they're trying to put together a contingent here because they just don't want to take a position on the issue that might turn off the people that oppose them, with Walczak being perhaps the exception. I talked briefly this morning with Brian McGrory and was just kind of asking him what their philosophy was. The Globe editor, yeah. What their philosophy was of doing that. And he noted that they had played up Walczak's position because here was someone actually taking a stand, and that's news, as opposed to people not taking stands, and that's why they have that interactive page on their homepage. It's really working well.
I mean, I think that the media, to defend the media here, the media is looking for a clear, interesting story arc. And when you've got an off-year election, right? You've got a lot of big stories happening. You've got the two leading money raisers are Conley and Connolly. You know, I mean, you've got this huge mayoral field that ranges from $1.3 million raised to negative, I think, $33.29 raised.
Although that guy who had negative 33, I think now he's got maybe 17.
Oh, okay. Well, things have changed.
Also, Marty Walsh raising a ton of money.
There's something for the media to follow. But yes, but I think you've got sort of a tough row to hoe. People don't know these people. And frankly, also, there's a limited audience here. It's only the city of Boston. I mean, a lot of people who tune in to local news, who read the Boston Globe, they don't live in Boston. You know, that's a sort of a perennial issue that those of us who really like city I love covering Boston politics, and I don't live in the city. And I think the counter argument you can make is that even if you're not a Boston voter, what happens in City Hall, you know, who's going to run the new administration, who's going to shape the city for the next decade or two, is going to be very, very important to the life you live here in Greater Boston. But perhaps, but I don't know that people make the connection.
No, I agree. Boston is, I live in the suburbs as well. Boston is the one thing that unites all of us and that we're interested in. And although I think we're all giving the media a little bit of a pass here, I hope that there's some really intense, comprehensive coverage right after Labor Day when people start paying attention.
I think we'll see it. I'm guardedly optimistic.